The Karate Kid was one of those movies from the 80s that I saw as a child, so it's heavy on nostalgic value and pop culture jokes.
Wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax off. Wax on, mouth off.
But is it still a good movie? Let's take a look and find out. It's about a kid named Daniel who moves to a new town and doesn't fit in. Basic coming-of-age scenario. He meets a girl named Allie who's real friendly, but there's one problem. She has a jealous ex-boyfriend who's a real asshole.
Just break my radio!
This wouldn't be too bad, except that he's a leader of a gang of bullies who all know karate and use it as a weapon to beat up anybody they don't like. I mean, they beat the shit out of him any chance they get. He tries to fight back, but that only makes things worse. Things take a turning point when Daniel's unexpectedly saved by the handyman from his apartment, Mr. Miyagi. Daniel had no idea Miyagi was a karate expert, so he gets Miyagi to train him for a karate tournament where he fights the bullies and gains their respect. That's the basic gist. It's sort of a retelling of Rocky. After all, it's the same director, John Avildsen. It has the training montage and the same basic formula, just instead of boxing, it's karate. To begin with, the character Daniel is kind of like a younger Rocky.
Real nice, come on in the mood. It stinks!
This school sucks, man!
I said out of here!
Sucks!
He's Italian, and he has a similar personality.
Oh, it's just this little voice. You know, it's telling me I gotta be some kind of a yo-yo to be talking to you right now.
You hang out with yo-yo people, get yo-yo friends.
Ralph Macchio is very believable in the role. He's generally a nice kid, except when pushed to extremes. He doesn't know what to do, so he makes some daring moves and perpetually gets himself into more trouble. It's convincing. He's an unstable youth and he has some issues. Mr. Miyagi's played by Pat Morita. He's the classic old mentor, just like Rocky's trainer, Mickey.
How did you do that? How did you do that?
Don't know. First time.
The difference between Mickey and Miyagi is that Mickey's all broken down. His days as a boxer has long passed. But Miyagi, we actually see him in action, and he kicks the crap out of everybody. Mickey's grouchy and bitter, and Miyagi is cool and self-controlled. But both men have experienced bad times in their past. The relationship between Daniel and Miyagi is the heart of the movie. I like how it plays out. At first, Daniel underestimates Miyagi, and Miyagi doesn't want to get involved in Daniel's troubles. But things take its course, and they become friends. Daniel's lost a father, and Miyagi's lost a son, so they sort of complete each other. Of course, I have to mention John Kreese, the sensei from the Cobra Kai. He's the king of the assholes. All the bullies are his pawns, and he encourages their bad behavior.
Sweep the leg. No mercy.
It's a little too absurd, but I couldn't imagine it any other way. He's the guy you love to hate.
Get him a body bag! Yeah!
A lot of the background music has sort of a synth pop sound, which I think weakens the movie a little because it sounds so dated. But there's also some scores composed by Bill Conti, and these parts are pretty good. Of course, there's the song You're the Best, which is used during the tournament montage. Dated or not, this one you gotta love. Play it at a party and see how many people start doing crane kicks. At last, there's a song by Survivor called The Moment of Truth. It plays during the end credits. It's not one of their best, but there's parts within the film where the instrumental sections kind of hint to it as like a musical motif. My overall impression of The Karate Kid is that it still holds up pretty well. I kind of underestimated it. Like Miyagi, it's aged, but it's still got it.
No way.
Right, no way.
Because
old man.
But what can be said for the sequel, The Karate Kid Part 2? It opens with a recap from the first movie, again very much like the Rocky films. It picks up immediately where the first Karate Kid left off. John Kreese is pissed off about the outcome of the tournament, takes it out on his own student.
That sucks, I did my best.
What did you say?
I said I did my best.
You're nothing. You lost. You're a loser.
Then Miyagi comes and puts him in his place. Then Daniel asks Miyagi the stupidest question.
You could have killed him, couldn't you?
Hey,
Well, why didn't you then?
Why didn't he kill him? Maybe because he didn't want to go to jail? The opening scene is so comic, but the rest is very different. Mr. Miyagi travels back to his homeland, Okinawa, to meet his dying father, reunite with the woman he loves, and settle an old grudge. So there's a lot of focus on Miyagi this time. His rival, Sato, wants to fight him to the death, but Miyagi wants peace. Daniel joins Miyagi on the trip, has his own love interest, and his own rival, Chosen, who's Sato's student. Daniel doesn't deserve anything that happens to him, and that's where I think this movie goes too far. With Sato, it's more believable that he and Miyagi have old business to settle. With Chosen and Daniel, they just met, so it's not very motivated. He's just being a typical bad guy. One thing that can be said about this movie, it sure had a lot of scenes that carried over into the Nintendo game. There's the swinging hammer and the ice-breaking scene. Both became training stages. Then, of course, there's the typhoon in which Miyagi saves Sato's life and earns his forgiveness. Kinda cheap that it all came down to an act of nature to settle things. But Chosen still wants to have it out with Daniel. It kinda sucks that he spent the whole movie trying not to fight, but now has no choice. Even worse, this is a battle to the death, much more serious than the karate tournament. It has its flaws, but overall, it's a good sequel. It develops the story further, raises the stakes, and it's much darker in tone. Not as good as the first, but I like it in its own way. Then came The Karate Kid Part 3. Daniel and Miyagi are now working on opening a bonsai tree store. Pretty exciting, right? Meanwhile, John Kreese is back, and he wants revenge.
make his knuckles bleed.
So he talks to his buddy, Terry Silver, who is a total nutcase.
Hey, I like that! Oh, I like that, Johnny! I'm gonna use that!
He's got nothing better to do, so helping good old Johnny get his revenge on some poor kid sounds like fun. He has no reason to do this, and it's not like a simple plan like let's go beat him up. It's an elaborate project. Terry hires a karate master by the name of Mike Barnes, basically villain number 3. First step of the plan, Barnes and his group of thugs pick on Daniel and try to force him into signing up for another karate tournament. When he refuses, they beat him up and destroy his tree shop. Then Mr. Miyagi comes in and kicks their butts. A satisfying turn of events, but very predictable. They hop in the car and speed away like reckless idiots. I wish that train would have hit them and spared us another hour of nonsense. They go to such extremes where they literally have Daniel hanging onto his life by a rope. Without much of a choice, he signs. The second part of the plan is for Terry to gain Daniel's trust. He goes as far as staging a fight with Barnes to make it look like he's protecting Daniel. And it just so happens that Daniel and Miyagi are having some differences. Terry takes advantage of it and gets Daniel to accept him as his new trainer. Terry's form of training is brutal. He makes Daniel injure himself and causes him fear. There's a scene where Daniel's at a dance club with his girlfriend. Terry randomly shows up and instigates a fight between Daniel and a total stranger. The idea is to get Daniel to fight dirty, but what's the point? It's not clear what Terry's goal is other than getting him in the ring with Barnes. The best scene is when Miyagi goes into the dojo, saving Daniel for the 900th time, and fights off all 3 villains by himself. The final fight scene at the tournament between Daniel and Barnes is nothing more than the same old shit we've seen before. That's the number one problem. It doesn't add anything to the story. It's like a rehash of the first Karate Kid. It revolves around silly, hot-headed bad guys who just want to make Daniel's life as miserable as possible. It's just what they do for fun. The only redeeming factor is Terry Silver, played by Thomas Ian Griffith. Of course, he made it on my top 10 baddest bad guys video. He is amazing to watch. He's so in control of every scene he's in. When he's bluffing to Daniel, you can actually see the 2 faces at work. The one face which is kind and gentle, offering Daniel help. The other face which means, I got this kid right where I want. He is the only reason to watch this movie. Other than that, it's a load of crap. Then there was the next Karate Kid. To be honest, I never bothered with it. I always considered the Karate Kid movies a trilogy, even though Miyagi is in the 4th one. It's the first 3 with Daniel that really count. Whatever the case, all I say is, remember the original.
Learn how to punch. Learn how to keep trying. No! Oh, Johnny, you all went behind the ear.